What's up, everybody? This is Big Sarge back with another video. And in this video, I'm going to be explaining to you exactly what the ASVAB examination is in case you plan on joining the U.S. military. So let's get into it. You're thinking about joining the U.S. military, whether it's the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Space Force, or Coast Guard, and you keep hearing about something called the ASVAB. Maybe your recruiter mentioned it, or maybe you stumbled across it while doing some late night Google searches. Either way, one big question is on your mind. What exactly is the ASVAB test, and is it really hard to pass? Now, don't worry, you're not alone. Almost everyone who's ever considered enlisting has asked that exact same question. And that's exactly what I'm going to explain to you in this video. So by the time you're done watching this, you're going to know exactly what the ASVAB is and what it's not, how the test is structured, what the scores mean and why they matter so much, how difficult is it to pass, and the best strategies to prepare without losing your mind. So with that being said, let's go. All right, so first things first, ASVAB. This stands for Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery. Now, it sounds fancy, but here's the deal. This is basically a giant placement test. So think of it like the SAT or ACT, but instead of helping you get into college, it helps the military figure out if you're qualified to enlist at all and what jobs are best suited for you if you do decide to enlist. So no, it's not about memorizing military trivia or history. You won't be asked about tanks, rifles, or battle tactics. Instead, the ASVAB measures your general academic skills, problem-solving ability, and technical knowledge. So in plain English, it's the military's way of figuring out exactly what you're good at. All right, so let's talk about how the ASVAB is structured. So the ASVAB has 10 subtests, each focusing on a different area. And depending upon whether you take the computer-based exam or the paper-based version, the number of questions and timing may vary a bit, but the subjects are the same. And those subjects are general science. We're going to be asked about life science, earth science, and physical science basics. You have arithmetic, reasoning, and these involve mathematical word problems. You got word knowledge, and this involves vocabulary and synonyms. You got paragraph comprehension. This involves reading passages and answering questions. You got mathematics knowledge, and this involves high school level math concepts. There's electronics information. This is about circuits, electricity, and electronics basics. You got auto and shop information. This is about automotive systems, tools, and shop practices. Mechanical comprehension. This is about physics concepts like levers, gears, and pulleys. You have assembling objects, and these are puzzle style visual reasoning questions. And then you have verbal expression, and this is a combination of word knowledge and paragraph comprehension. Now, the test usually takes about 3 hours to complete, and the computer version, it adapts to your skill level, meaning the questions get harder or easier based on your answers. And the paper version is static, meaning it doesn't change because it's paper. All right, so let's talk about exactly what the ASVAB score means. So here's where things get important. So the ASVAB doesn't just spit out one score. Instead, it gives you a bunch of different scores, including line scores that determine which jobs you qualify for. But the big one that you're going to hear about the most is called the AFQT score. And that is the Armed Forces Qualification Test score. And this is your overall percentile score that determines whether you can even enlist. And it is based on 4 sections. It's based on the arithmetic reasoning section, mathematics knowledge, word knowledge, and paragraph comprehension. And your AFQT score is reported as a percentile. So if you score a 50, that means you did better than 50% of other test takers. And the minimum AFQT scores by branch are as follows. So the Army, you got to score at least a 31. Navy a 35, Air Force a 36, Marines a 32, Coast Guards a 40, and the Space Force a 31, but realistically, they want you to score higher than that. So while a 31 might technically get you into the Army, the higher your score, the better your MOS options will be, because a low score, this might still let you enlist, but you will be limited to jobs that don't require technical skills. How hard is the ASVAB to pass? So that is the $1 million question. So let me go ahead and break this down. Well, the truth is most people can pass with some preparation. So if you paid attention in high school and you have decent reading and math skills, and you're probably going to pass without too much trouble. If it's been a while since you cracked open a math book or studied science, then you're going to need some review. Now, if you struggled a lot academically, then you may find the ASVAB more challenging, but it's still passable with practice. Now, here's where most people struggle. Most of them struggle with the math, especially as it relates to algebra and geometry, because a lot of people just aren't fresh on those concepts. They also struggle in word knowledge. So if your vocabulary isn't strong, then you obviously want to study. And then they also struggle in the mechanical and electronic section. So if you've never touched a car engine or a circuit board, then this might feel foreign. Now, here are some reasons why some people think this exam is hard. The first is test anxiety, because the pressure of knowing your future depends upon the score, and that can potentially mess with your head. Then there's the time pressure, because some sections, they give you very little time to answer each question. And then there's just simply being out of practice. So if you've been out of high school for some years, it's tough to dive back into academic testing. But here's the encouraging part. Thousands of people pass the ASVAB every single year, including people who thought they weren't good at school. So chances are, if you put in a little work, you will be okay. All right, so let's go over some tips for how to make the ASVAB easier. So here's what actually works. You want to go out there and take practice tests first. So do not walk in there blind. A practice test will show you what the questions look like. It'll highlight your strengths and weaknesses, and it will help reduce anxiety because you'll know what to expect. Also, you want to focus on the AFQT sections first. So remember, your AFQT score is the gatekeeper. So prioritize studying the arithmetic reasoning, the mathematics knowledge, the word knowledge, and the paragraph comprehension. Because if you nail those, then you've guaranteed your enlistment ticket. And then you can work on your line scores to help you get better MOS options. You also want to brush up on your high school math. So you want to spend extra time on fractions, ratios, and percentages. You want to spend some time on basic algebra and geometry and some word problems. Now, you don't need to be a math genius. You just need to know enough to work through the questions. You also want to improve your vocabulary. So go ahead and start reading daily, use flashcards, download a vocabulary app, because word knowledge, this is one of the easiest areas to improve quickly. You also want to use ASVAB prep books or applications. Now, there are tons of resources out there, and I'm not going to name them all, but you can find them online, and some of them are free. So there's no need for you to go out there and try to reinvent the wheel in order to help you pass this test. You also want to manage your time. So on test day, do not overthink. Just move on if you're stuck. Eliminate all the obviously wrong answers first, and then use any extra time to double check your work. And then most importantly, in my opinion, you want to sleep, eat, and relax. Now, this sounds basic, but showing up well rested with a clear head, this can make a huge difference. So do not cram all night before you go in there and try to take this test. Now let's talk about how this score affects your military career. And this is huge because a lot of people, they just want to pass, but the difference between barely passing and scoring high can completely change your Army or whatever branch you plan on going to experience. So if you get a low score anywhere between 31 to 40, well, you may still get in, but job options will be limited, often to less technical or more physically demanding MOSs. If you get a medium score anywhere between 50 to 65, well, this can open doors to a solid range of jobs, including some technical fields. And if you get a high score anywhere between 70 to 99, well, now you're more competitive for the best MOSs. You might qualify for some signing bonuses and some advanced training opportunities. So basically what you need to do, you need to study a little harder now, because that can help you land a better job in the military, also a job that's less physically grueling, and it could possibly set you up for some great opportunities after you decide to get out of the military. All right, so let's go over some FAQs about the ASVAB. And the first question a lot of people ask is, can you fail this test? Technically, yes, you can. If you score below your branch's minimum score, then you cannot enlist. But you can usually retake the test after a waiting period. Now, how many times can you retake the test? Well, you can take it up to 3 times total with a waiting period in between the attempts. Another question is the ASVAB multiple choice? Yes, it is. Every section is multiple choice. There are no essays and no short answer questions that you got to answer. Do your scores expire? Yes, they do. Your ASVAB scores are valid for up to 2 years. And is the test the same for every branch? The test itself is the same, but each branch sets its own minimum score requirements and MOS line score requirements. All right, so is the ASVAB hard? Well, here's the bottom line. The ASVAB is not designed to be impossible. It's designed to measure your strengths. For most people, it's challenging but very passable with a little bit of preparation. So if you're fresh out of high school and you did reasonably well, you'll probably breeze through most of the exam. If you've been out of high school for 5, 10 plus years, it might take you a little bit more effort, but it is absolutely doable. Now, the key is preparation. So go in knowing what to expect, brush up on your weak spots, and treat it seriously, because passing the ASVAB isn't just about getting into the military. It's about opening doors to better jobs and a better future. So let me go ahead and wrap all this up. What is the ASVAB? Well, this is your entry ticket into the U.S. military, your job placement exam, and in some ways, the first big test of your new career path. Now, how hard is it? Well, it's hard enough that you just can't wing it, but it's easy enough that even with a couple weeks of preparation, you can pass with flying colors. And if you want the best shot at not just joining, but landing an MOS that you actually enjoy, then take this test seriously. Prepare smart, practice often, and aim higher than just the minimum score. Because at the end of the day, the ASVAB is not about testing what you know. It's about testing your potential.